about how a small community insists on being heard, ramps up the political discourse, and helps shape its own destiny. Who are we? We're Orient. We're the end. Next stop, Portugal. We're the tail of the dog. We're a hamlet in the town of Southold, about 750 people out of about 22,000, about 5 square miles out of 54. We're older than the rest of the town, on average 58 compared to 48 in the town as a whole. Our buildings are older too. Out of 300 historically preserved buildings in all of Southold, about 150, half of them, are in Orient. We're more rural than the rest of the town, and we have more preserved land than the rest of the town. We're less commercial. We have one full-time store, a few part-time stores, a service station, and a few tradespeople. This is our downtown. We are different. Not so much, but enough. We vote a little differently, we're gayer than the rest of the town, and we are our own unique little community. What do we want? We want what everyone wants. We want our interests recognized, our needs met, our values preserved. How do we get that? Well, we don't get to decide directly. We don't have a legislative body. The nearest legislative body is the town, but we don't have direct representation on the town board, nor on the planning board, nor the board of trustees, nor the zoning board. We have to depend that the at-large representatives, elected primarily by the 21,250 other residents of Southold, will look out for our interests. We do have a civic organization, the Orient Association, OA. OA is a 501c3, not-for-profit organization, educational, not religious, not political. Our primary purpose is to bring information to the community of Orient about issues that are critical to its well-being. What does OA do? Well, we witness. We try and go to every town board meeting that has an issue that affects Orient. We go to the planning board meetings, the zoning board meetings, the Historic Preservation Commission meetings, and we watch and we listen. We don't speak much because we don't take positions on individual issues in general unless they have a broad community impact and our members have weighed in on it. But we're there, and the commissioners get to know us. And we think our presence makes a difference. We think they're more thoughtful and more careful because we're there. We sometimes fight. The Orient Association was founded in the 1980s when there was a plan to bring dense housing to our small community. There was strenuous objections. We fought the plan was abandoned. We fought again when there was a plan to bring a major water main project here because that seemed to signal more density for this hamlet that the community didn't want. That plan also died. A transportation committee came up with an idea to have massive trucking come through our hamlet. They were going to reduce traffic on the New England Thruway and instead put it on our single two-lane road in Orient. And they were going to have bigger trucks and more of them. We fought this. The plan was abandoned. A congressional committee came up with an idea to have 750 condos on Plum Island. We're the path to Plum Island. This would have crowds and traffic and overwhelm our infrastructure. We screamed. The town listened, and the town came up with a zoning plan that we hope, yet to be seen, but we hope, will help keep Plum Island in its natural state. Recently, the state decided, without consultation with our hamlet or with the town, to put massive traffic signs on our little two-lane road, leading people nowhere, advertising nothing. We howled, the politicians joined us, the signs came down. But we are not primarily a lobbying group. We're not a legislature. Mostly we're educational. We inform, we watch, and sometimes we fight. What we realized were that these are tactical issues we've been doing here. This is not the big long-term issues that we often face. We know how to put out a fire. We know how to wage war. Do we know how to create methods to deal with those slow changes, those things that reshape our community, possibly in ways that we don't care for? Do we know how to wage peace? What we needed was a big long-range plan, something strategic. Well, the town is already working on a strategic plan. They're holding meetings, they're inviting people in, and many from Orient have gone, and we've participated and spoken up a good deal at these meetings. The town of Southold's moving in a pretty good direction, but it doesn't necessarily cover the exact and specific needs that this hamlet needs. So we began to have meetings. A few people started to get together, and 3 became 6, and 6 became a dozen, and then 30, and then 130, talking, planning, meeting, trying to figure out what Orient needs, what we are, what we love, and what we're going to be. There were many, many ideas and complaints and issues that people raised in these meetings. When people raise these kinds of concerns, it generally falls into 3 categories. The broadest are feelings. I want Orient to be just the way it was when I was a kid, even if my idyllic memory is not really accurate. Or the most specific is, I don't want to see any fences or any hedges on any road in Orient. Do these approaches work? Are these really the broad values that we have to try and pursue? No, neither of them lead to success. The first is much too broad and vague. It means different things to different people, and it doesn't lead to any particular action. The latter is much too specific and too personal. It doesn't take into account the needs of others. Farmers may need fences to help take care of deer. Some people love hedges. And we're committed to trying to represent the broadest community interests, not just a subgroup. So we have to go for a middle level, a policy-based approach. Not platitudes, not procedures. So we talked these things through, and we tried to figure out what kept coming up over and over, and what people wanted, and what was likely to lead to something that could be implemented. We came up with 9 propositions in 4 major areas. I'm not going to go through the whole set of propositions. You can see them on our website. The 4 main areas were building and land use, traffic, agriculture and pest control, and water quality. These were the things that kept coming up, and these issues really were, it seemed like we might get a consensus on some of them. I'm going to give you one example of an issue that came up. People in Orient kept saying, we don't want to end up like some of the Hamptons. We don't want our small housing to be dwarfed by hulking McMansions, crowding out neighbors until the neighbor sells to the next hedge fund mogul and he puts up a behemoth, and then there goes the neighborhood. People didn't want that. So we had a proposal that said, housing, a new construction or renovations in housing has to be in scale with the other housing in the neighborhood. A policy, not a procedure as to how to do it, not just we don't like big houses, but something that would lead us to something we could agree upon. So we had these great ideas. How do we get a sense of what Orient feels about it? Even 100 people talking is not a whole community. We created a ballot. The ballot would allow people to vote individually on each proposition. And then we sent out over 1,000 letters. We had 400 people on our mailing list who got multiple mailings. We asked other organizations to send out to their members as well. We had ads in newspapers, and several stories ran as well. We then created a paper ballot that could be voted on paper or by mail. We got responses. Over 360 people answered the ballots. That's more than half of the eligible voters in Orient. We had over 100 people give us detailed comments. So we had a huge response on something that didn't elect officials, didn't raise lower taxes, wasn't the kind of thing that drove people to the polls, and yet we got a great response. Okay, we got the responses. How many yes responses do we get? How many favorables? And what level would we need in order to say, this is the will of Orient? This is something that we can go to the town authorities and say, these ought to be implemented. We weren't sure what level of support would justify a statement like that. 60%, 70, 75. We thought we'd get strong support for some propositions, but we didn't know how much and how many. As it turned out, it didn't matter. Every proposition got at least 4 out of 5 of the Orient stakeholders responding in favor of that proposition, one of them getting a 92% support rate. We wanted to hear from Orient, wow, Orient speaks, and with nearly a unanimous voice. So we now have these ideas, these things that the Orient community says that it wants. What's next? How do we make it happen? Well, we told the town the results of this meeting. We then formed committees in the 4 major areas to try and work with town officials and other experts so that we could try and put together plans to get from what we wanted to how to do it, to how to implement it. And we are now having those committees begin to work with town officials and other experts to help us get to something that can be actually implemented. Will the town go along? We don't know for sure. Perhaps the town will let us have certain policies and procedures that are applicable to our small community. Perhaps the town will decide to implement some of these policies for the whole community. Perhaps the town will talk and meet and dither and do nothing any differently. We don't know for sure, but we're going to find out. This community meets, informs each other, advocates, and fights, and we know how to do it in a disciplined and controlled way. When the Orient community speaks, the town, the county, and the state do listen. When we call up a meeting and ask people to come out, they show up in numbers far greater than in other hamlets and in the town as a whole. We invite politicians to our meetings, and they come, and I see 1 or 2 of them here tonight. The press follows what we do. We're going to continue to watch, to inform, and to work toward the goals of what the Orient community wants. But we've already accomplished a great deal. Hundreds of people have come out and been involved in this process, talking, debating, listening to what this community wants to be. We've had more than half the adult population actively working on designing plans for the future of Orient. And we will continue to inform, to lobby, to work together. This is now a better informed, better engaged community than it was in the past. And our community votes. We've already won. Thank you.